welcome back to Dubai Expo 2020, everyone, live from the Malaysia Pavilion building right here in Dubai. Now, we previously had a session earlier with Encik Farid Rosli, and the topic was venture debt in Southeast Asia, present landscape, challenges and opportunity. Coming up very shortly is the topic Malaysia Debt Ventures Technology Startup Experience. This session will be moderated, shall I say, by Encik Zuhry Rashid. Encik Zuhry is the Vice President of Business and Technology Advisory Division of Malaysia Debt Ventures Berhad, overseeing consulting and technical services. Prior to his current role, he has held various positions within the financial services industry in multinationals such as Grant Thornton International, NEC Asia Pacific Group, ASEAN Finance Bank, and Fortune 500 companies formerly known as Electronic Data Systems, aka EDS. He is an MBA graduate from Management and Science University of Malaysia and an Information Technology degree graduate holder from Multimedia University. So we are in very, very good hands. This should be another great session. Over to you, Encik Zuhry.
Good day to all our guests in Expo 2020 Dubai. This is Zuhry Rashid from Malaysia Debt Ventures, Vice President of the Business and Technology Advisory. Joining us today, we have 5 distinguished panelists. Petrina, co-founder and CEO of Nuren Group. Howie Chang, founder and CEO of Forward School. Sean Tan from Applecrumby and Crumby and Fish. Warren from 123RF, and YT Siew from Jirnexu, joining us on today's topic, sharing their experience with MDV'S technology startup that we have gone through before with them. So let's begin with Petrina. Maybe you can give us a bit of introduction. What is Nuren Group all about, and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, sure. Thanks for the introduction. So in Nuren Group, we follow the important journey of a woman life stage, from them getting married to entering motherhood. Being a mother myself, I have been through these life-changing moments. So having experienced the pains and gains as a mother, I considered myself very lucky to be in the business that I'm truly passionate of, and at the same time, being able to help other parents who are going through this parenting journey. Maybe I will go through a bit of background about myself. I started my career as a consultant in Accenture Consulting. I then joined an investment bank to lead its investment portfolio, focusing very much on deal evaluations in the technology sector. I'm also a strong supporter of women in tech and have 2 kids at the moment. With my strong passion in technology and business and my personal experiences as a mother and wife, I started this venture back in September 2013. My venture is Nuren Group. We are a community and platform commerce marketplace targeting at Southeast Asia female consumers in the parenting space.
Thank you, Petrina. So let's move on to the next panel. We have Howie Chang from Forward School. Howie, if you don't mind, some brief introduction on what is Forward School all about.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Howie. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Forward School. So here at Forward School, we see ourselves as a revolutionary technology and future skills school. We are based in Malaysia, obviously, and we equip aspiring tech professionals with industry-ready skills required for the fast-moving tech sector. We provide a range of what we call expert led online and on-campus training in coding, data science, design, digital marketing, and more. So our philosophy is actually driven by real-world learning experiences developed in tandem with our industry partners. Our ultimate goal at the end of the day is really to provide the best digital age education in Southeast Asia. By being the best, we mean we strive to help every student become a better version of themselves for a future we believe will be made by creators, not consumers. Thank you.
Great. Let's hear now from Sean, Applecrumby and Fish. Some brief introduction, Sean.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sean Tan from Malaysia, and I am the co-founder and CEO for Applecrumby and Fish. So we founded the company on the 2nd of August 2012, and by our e-commerce website, Applecrumby and Fish officially launched on the 1st of October in the same year. So technically we'll be turning 9 next month. Our story was simple. I mean, we started with a very, very basic need: make the right choices for our family. We were parents searching for safe baby products. There weren't many options back then, and we couldn't find what we were looking for. Simple as that. And we realized that we weren't alone. And hence our brand, simply known as Applecrumby, was born. We're a baby wellness brand that values quality, transparency, and design. Families deserve to have safe and healthy options without the additional cost. Everything we do is for this simple reason: because we believe what you use on the baby matters a lot. Now, Applecrumby offers many products that are safe, natural, and organic. But our best-selling product is our 100% chlorine-free diapers. It's free of all nasty and harmful chemicals. They are the softest, most absorbent baby diapers you'll be able to find in the market today, which promises a good night's sleep for both you and your baby.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, so now next, let's hear from Warren on 123RF. Warren, if you can please briefly introduce us.
Yes, my name is Warren. I'm currently the CEO of Inmagine. Inmagine is a global creative ecosystem, and we have a couple of brands within our portfolio. Our 3 main brands are 123RF, which sells stock content, principally imagery around the world. And we compete against players like Shutterstock and Getty Images and the likes. We also own Pixlr, which is one of the world's leading online photo and graphic editors. So if you're looking for an online Photoshop equivalent, you want to make some edits to images, you can just reach out and check out www.pixlr.com, Pixlr, right? We are actually number 2 in traffic after Canva globally. In addition to that, we also have Designs.ai, which is an AI-powered platform for content creation. Whether we're talking about marketing videos, tutorial videos, banners, visuals that you need for social media campaigns. In short, our mission statement is really to make design and the creative process more accessible to everyone by making it smarter, faster, and easier. In total, we have perhaps 300 employees across most of the major geographies, because our clientele are mostly outside of Malaysia, right? Basically, we serve customers from the US, from Europe, from the rest of APAC as well, including Dubai. Thank you.
Right, great. So let's move on to YT Siew. YT, if you can share with us all about Jirnexu.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my name is YT. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Jirnexu. Founded the business I think over 9 years ago now. And our core business has always been ringgitplus.com, which has grown to become the largest online marketplace for banking and insurance products here in Malaysia. Turning the clock back, why did I start this business back in 2012? I'd moved back to Malaysia recently from overseas, and I was very used to being able to go online and search for all my basic banking and insurance products. When I tried to do that in Malaysia 10 years ago or 9 years ago, there was very little information online. There was no way to actually apply for the products. So that was really the core problem I wanted to solve. I wanted to enable consumers to pick up their phone and get access to basic and the best personal financial services right there and then. It should be as easy to get a credit card, make an investment, buy insurance. It should be as easy to do that as it is to say book a holiday or buy something online or to get a Grab. And that's really been the very core of what we've done over the last 9 years. And I think the core difference we try to make is, we want to give consumers more choice, more value and more convenience than any other channel.
Okay, thank you, IT. So let's move on a bit on your background. So Petrina, you mentioned to us that you were previously working a day job, and then now you're currently an entrepreneur and also a business owner. So what made you decide that this is what you want to do? Perhaps you can give us some insights on your experience.
Okay, so I mean, this is a very similar problem that most parents has went through. 7 years ago, that was when we started our business. We realized that there are actually lack of online information, more like online trusted information in the website. So looking for or learning about parenting is still very traditional. We have to go to like baby shops, we go to baby fairs, we actually buy books and magazines to learn about parenting. So that is when we started to come up with the idea of having a one-stop platform which actually provides solutions from providing tips, guidance, trusted content to parents' reviews, influencers reviews, as well as a place whereby parents can shop at their convenience and have a trusted platform to rely to in their parenting needs. So this is how the idea actually turned from a personal experience into a business. And currently today we are a platform reaching out to over 5 million users in Southeast Asia. We have approximately 3 million monthly active users on our platform, and every day we've been helping parents to solve their parenting issues, and also helping them to make online shopping a more stress-free shopping experience.
Right, interesting. Okay, so maybe we can move on something similar for Howie. When you started Forward School, how was it like? Did you had the idea first, or did you saw something in the market that was a niche? Howie, if you can share experience.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Just a bit of background. So I was actually been very much part of startups, big and small. I was born and bred in Penang actually, but I left for Singapore after Form 5 to pursue my tertiary education. And I've actually been in Singapore for the last 18 years before coming back to Penang around 5 years ago. And while in Singapore, I had the opportunity actually to come under the wings of two kind of very notable CEOs, very much privileged to kind of learn from them. And both of these startups eventually got acquired. So one of them is Vicky.com and the other one is Trademark.com. And Vicky.com remains one of the most notable acquisitions here in Southeast Asia. And from that experience, I was kind of really exposed to what it really means to startup building. I wasn't a co-founder in any way, but I was part of the early leadership team, primarily taking care of product management. So I take care of everything that has to do with customer front-facing applications. So that includes the website, the mobile apps, and I was just very much enjoying myself, being in the intersection of the tech team, the design team, as well as the business stakeholders. And I would say that the entrepreneurial bug caught me, and I just couldn't stop. But I would say that in the end of the day, it's really about just wanting to solve a real problem. And long story short, I started a few other startups as well. And Forward School, I started it around 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And then it came about because I was actually helping the state government to build up the startup ecosystem. And I've met lots of founders in the process of it. And I would say that we are, no lacking of good ideas, but we are always lacking of people who can execute them. And this is something that I am very passionate about. I think that's definitely a huge gap in terms of what all the opportunities that the digital economy is offering. But at the same time, we have a lack of talents in this area. So I took it upon myself to build what I would call a platform offering employment as a programs and career coaching services. So that's long story short. Thank you.
Great, Howie. Very interesting. We'll come back to you later on that. Okay, now let's move on to Sean. Okay, Sean. So we know that Applecrumby and Fish, you guys have very great products. But what made that turning point for you to expand this? Maybe you can share us a bit of that transition point. How it all started.
So basically, as I said, when we started out as an e-commerce website, we were selling just about practically everybody's product. So at one point in time, we had 13,000 FTEs back in 2012, 2013, and we were one of the biggest niche baby e-commerce websites. But all that particular business model went down with when marketplaces like 11th Street Lazada entered the market, and the writing was clearly on the wall, plastic, big, right? Basically, the brands were coming in on their own. Margins were diminishing. More sellers were coming on board, right, to steal market share, and we were thinking, gosh, how are we going to survive? So I guess at that point in time, it was really just about innovate or die. And we were able to sell community, which we built up over 3 to 4 years, which was rich and plentiful bunch of money who only wanted safe and natural and organic products. And that was our niche, and that was our specialty. And we were wondering, how are we going to manage this data with new product offerings that were just our content. That's basically the light bulb moment where suddenly we think, hey, why not explore in our own brand? And that's where, whether it's confidence or faith, right? And that's how we started our first SKU, which was just basically a baby website. A couple of months later, we introduced baby diapers, and it was amazing. The first container sold out in 4 days, and ever since then, even up until today, we're just chasing demand.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Sean. Great insights. I never imagined it would be quite interesting turning point. Okay, let's move on to Warren. Warren, 123RF. We've heard a lot of interesting stories, but perhaps you can share with us when you came up with this idea of having online photo stocks and all this.
So I did not start off the company, right? It was founded by a husband and wife team named Andy and Stephanie Sin. So basically right now I'm the CEO because they passed on the baton to try to professionalize our management, right? But the whole idea came about because Andy was working in a similar business. He came back to Malaysia from London about 20 years ago, and he realized there was an opportunity over there, right? Where there's a need for people to start licensing content. But because in this region there wasn't that much of an appreciation of IP, and so it was forced by necessity for us to look abroad for our businesses, right? And so hence, but through the nature of the industry and out of necessity, the company was forced to look abroad from day one, and that's the reason why it has to be global, right? So, but to your question on what's the inspiration and how does it tie to the whole vision, right? I think we start off from the core part of content licensing, and then subsequently we started the journey of acquiring tools as we began our transitional process into a SaaS first business. So from being content to a software first business, being connected through community and technology, and that's the core strategy. And we saw that because that's where the world is moving towards. The value is shifting from the content creation itself to the process of customizing and creating your own content, right? So the goal is really to empower creators, or anybody, especially everybody here within this call, to create things on your own as a way to really serve the business requirements.
Okay, great. Let's hear from YT. Maybe YT, a bit of how Jirnexu suddenly came about. What was the need basis at that time?
So how did it come about? I guess from a kind of top-down perspective, having spent time in London, I used very similar services, a business that's still around, very successful, called Money Supermarket. So I used to use Money Supermarket for all my personal finances. If I needed to get a credit card, get a savings account, renew car insurance. So it was just this super convenient online one-stop shop for all personal finances. So that was, I guess, from my point of view, that was a service to me, it was like a utility. I used it very regularly. I never bothered going anywhere else for personal finances. So, when I came back to Malaysia and that the service didn't exist or did not exist, I personally, I just wanted to replicate that. So that was the kind of the top-down, why. That's the top-down reason for why how I saw the opportunity. Essentially copying a business model from a developed market. But the reality of replicating the product and the service in this market has been obviously a roller coaster. But on a high level, it was very much about copying what was already a very successful business in many other markets.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Let's talk about market access. I believe most of your products and services, your customers coexist, in various market segments. So maybe Petrina, you can share with us, what was the challenges faced by your business in getting access to those markets? What was the ups and downs from experience?
Yeah. So Nuren Group, we actually have a couple of platforms within the group. We focus content community commerce platform for users that goes through the wedding and parenting journey. Our platforms include Motherhood, Club Mama, Wedding.com.my, and Influencer. So all these platforms helps our customers to make decisions on their important life stages. By reading content, user reviews, medical tips, workshops, talk shows, samplings. So some of the issues that we have encountered or challenges that we have encountered is like building a brand is tough, especially when we are up against many players in the industry. We have the likes of Lazada and Shopee, who are also an e-commerce marketplace, and heavily subsidizing users out there, with vouchers and discounts codes. So something that we did very differently is we are very community-centric platform. We collaborate very well with brands and users. So through Motherhood, we actually acquired one of the largest pool of parents users, which is essentially niche compared with the very broad-based marketplaces like Lazada and Shopee. We are basically the perfect digital enabler for brands to market their products and services to targeted female audiences and female community. We also work very well with brands, to create content, samplings, reviews, and how we access the market is our users basically understood what we are providing. They are actually benefiting from the tips and guides, and workshops that we have provided to them, as well as the convenience of making a purchase through our e-commerce platform. So essentially, what we are offering to the market is we are one-of-kind platform. Basically, we are a hybrid platform that is able to deliver both a combination of content, community, and commerce to our users.
Right. So Petrina, back on the earlier point. So what was the few things that you wish you had not done? Perhaps you can share the downside of the market access.
Things that I had not done.
Or you had done in the past.
Okay. So one of the challenges or the failures that we have been through, is very much on when we started our platform, that was 7 years back. Motherhood is basically a pure e-commerce platform. So like I mentioned, we were very much competing with the other e-commerce platforms as well in the market. So the turning point then was when we started to deliver content. We basically give back rewards and also education to our users. So, and along with our partnerships with the brands and hospitals and KOLs, key opinion influencers, since then we are able to turn around our motherhood users to our loyal customers and advocates.
I see, great. I see. So back to Howie. Earlier you mentioned about having difficulty with the talent pool, getting access to great skills, entrepreneurs, founders. But having said that, market is also an issue probably when startups at the beginning point. So maybe you can share with us what were the ups and downs when you had to gather market access.
Yeah, so in terms of market at this point in time, we are looking very much only in Malaysia, with plans growing into other Southeast Asia countries. And I must say that at this point in time, we don't quite have much of a market access issue, because from the very early on, we have pretty much identified our targeted audience. And as Forward School, we see ourselves as a company in which that we imagine higher education in one way or another, and we provide an alternative higher education path for those who are kind of really interested to get a kickstart in the tech industry. And for us, we offer programs for high school leavers as well as the current workforce to upskill themselves. So when we talk about high school leavers, the specific audience that we are kind of catering to is actually two extremes. One is basically people who might not necessarily looking for accreditation, but rather more of a quality education impact. More often than not, this group of audience, they come from rather well-to-do families. But what we kind of really am interested and I'm personally passionate about is basically the audience in which that they might not necessarily do very well in their academic studies. So for example, they might not do very well in their SPM. And when you don't do well in big exams such as SPM, the choices will be very limited for you in terms of the degrees that you have to pursue. And so for us, we stepped in from this in this area. We have an internal aptitude test which we take very seriously. So even if your SPM results might not do well, as long as you do very well in our aptitude test, to show that you do have an aptitude in programming, we'll give you an accredited program. Recently, we have just gotten our accreditation from the Jabatan Kemahiran Malaysia, the skills department under the Ministry of Human Resource. And this is one of the audience that we kind of really catering to, and it's providing a very good opportunity for those who can excel in which otherwise are denied elsewhere. And we largely differentiate ourselves by providing our students with three main things. One is basically we provide them with a new way to learn. We are a project-first school, and there is actually no big one-off exams. Instead, you learn experientially, which we believe is the fastest way to become operational. Second, we provide you with an accreditation that kind of really matters. So students can actually earn certificates and accredited diplomas in software engineering, data science, AI, and more. And third, we provide you with a worldwide job guarantee. So we are very confident in our model that we offer a worldwide job guarantee whereby tuition fees are refunded if students does not find a job within 6 months of graduation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Howie. Great insight. So, Sean, how about yourself? I mean, getting customers. What was that challenge that you had to grow your numbers? Maybe you can share with us.
We started Applecrumby with a very specific website. The website Applecrumby and Fish, which was find baby special. Little did we know how much of a self-fulfilling prophecy that would be. But the idea has always been about providing safe, natural and organic baby features for the family. And remarkably at the time, it was a segment that none of our competitors were paying attention to. So we were actually occupying a niche segment that most of the major baby brands were totally wasn't even paying any wasn't even putting any focus into, and in a way we were able to kind of sneak in and take and fulfill that gap and grow that market. Let me give you a small example. The absorbent core of any disposable data contains a combination of laptop that's made of soft wood fibers, and also together with super absorbent polymers, also known as FAP. Now, the fluff top there is an additional absorbent and also to keep the FAP in place. The cost of production that most traditional mass market brands use chlorine to bleach the powder, hence giving it a white serum. And it also the chlorine also removes lignin. It's an element of wood fiber that yellows paper when exposed to sunlight, so something like newspapers. So now chlorine is mainly called cancer. But given that it's also very massive, it is also one of the cheapest ways to process glass top with wood fibers. Now, not only are Applecrumby doubles free of chlorine, our prices are also comparable to better quality mass market brands. So, for our money, also that were available in major stores and we deliver right up to the doorstep.
Okay, thank you, Sean. That is useful, in terms of branding and the product quality, right? What the consumer want basically. I think it was also mentioned by Petrina that the market would demand a certain kind of product and services, which is probably why we have to meet those demands. Back to White. Earlier you mentioned about getting B2B on board. Maybe your experience, getting to deal with B2B segment. How are they different compared to say B2C? Would entrepreneurs, other startups would say that okay, what I have to market myself to B2C would be relevant to B2B, or maybe vice versa?
Good question. I guess I can can speak from our experience. Selling to banks is quite a unique experience because they are very big, right? When you talk about B2B, that can be. I remember talking to somebody in a similar industry, and they talk about little b and big B, right? So I think they were at Intuit, one of the world's largest kind of tech data companies, and they have different strategies for SMEs as opposed to large corporates, right? And now banks are always large corporates, and I think it's fair to say that traditional banks are really not set up to work with startups. In fact, they are set up specifically not to work with startups, meaning that in order to become a vendor to a bank, typically you need to show 3 years of profitability or something, right? Otherwise, you'll be considered a risky vendor, and things like that. So, specifically when it comes to dealing with banks, insurance companies, investment companies, or I think any large, heavily regulated corporate client, you have to be prepared for very long sales cycle, very long onboarding cycles, very straight and pretty tough requirements placed on you as a vendor. But the flip side is that there should be less competition, right? I mean, because it's harder to become a vendor to these companies. There are typically fewer people competing, right? Whereas if it was easier to meet the needs of the client, then there will be more. There will typically be more potential competition. And I've heard similar stories to startups in industries like, say for example, anything to do with pharmaceuticals or medicine, right? Also, your clients are huge, heavily regulated. So it can be pretty tough to engage with large corporates.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, YT. Interesting story there. Okay, let's talk about funding. I believe being a startup, being an entrepreneur, each of you all have your own unique experience, getting funding. So maybe we'll start with Petrina. When you first started, with your idea, with your business model, business plan, the team that you have, what was it like getting funding back then? Maybe you can share a bit of your story.
Yeah, my first experience of raising fund was back in 7 years ago. I was that time I think I was pregnant when I meet my first investor. So I guess some of the first not very good first impression, I guess, seeing a pregnant entrepreneur, and trying to understand what kind of commitment would she have, after giving birth. But I guess it's very much on my perseverance, and I'm quite persuasive, and I actually tried to get a meeting and across a time of 6 months to 1 year, and it was that persistence that I think investors actually had trust and confidence in our leadership team, and I ended up securing the funding, although the funding only came in after I had given birth. So of course there are a few things that we in terms of that is the first angel round that I have raised. And fast forwarding with the angel round, we actually managed to grow Wedding into a regional platform. And while we are moving our users into the parenting journey, after getting married, the next thing you would think of is starting a family or having kids. That is when we raised our second round, which was a lot more easier, because by then we would have a lot of validations, and with the first round of funding, we are actually able to show certain milestones that we have promised, and having met our projections and expectations from the second round investor. Yep.
Okay, maybe you can share a bit on the do's and don'ts on how to manage your relationship with the venture capitals or your investors.
The prospective ones, right, or the existing investors.
Yeah, the ones that you have experienced so far.
Okay. I guess it's a lot of trust and confidence and constant communication. Keep our stakeholders, transparent, and also continuously sharing them, updates, whether it's weekly meetings or monthly, meetings, and updates, of course, about the financial viability of the business. That's something that is very important to keep all the stakeholders, aware of what's happening. And of course, we actually managed to, get some of our investors to, connect us to even more wider pool of other investors. So by having, good knowledge of the companies, our investors are actually able to share our pictures across to their friends and families, or even like any contacts that have met, which actually take interest, and help us in our coming round of investments.
Okay, thank you, Petrina. Let's move on to Howie. Howie, maybe you can share with us, your story about, your first funding and where you are now.
Yeah, so we are basically less than 2 years old, and we have actually gone on to just raise a round of funding from angel investors. And I would say that we tread fundraising carefully. I think in the end of the day, it's whatever funds that we're going to be raising, it needs to be strategic. At the very least, it needs to be from like-minded, either individuals or corporations. And I'm very fortunate to have a group of angel investors that are backing people. And these are all from the industry. So they run companies themselves. They are very hands-on as CEOs and founders, and they can kind of really identify the pain points that I'm addressing firsthand. So I think that kind of really helps when you approach people intentionally and strategically. And obviously, I think when people invest in you, I've always felt that it's not so much about the capital that they put in, but I think when they invest in you, they're investing their trust in you. And that's a very heavy responsibility, in my opinion. And so, like what Petrina has kind of really mentioned, I think that the trust goes a very long way. And, being very transparent, keeping the communications open all the time, and being accountable is extremely crucial. So for us is we are revenue generating, and so what is kind of really guiding us, if we were to raise again, it's really for strategic purposes. And it's also because we would want to speed up some of the areas that we would like to grow in. But yeah, I think, fundraising is both an art and a science. And as CEO, I think one of our top jobs is to ensure that the money is in the bank. As you might know, I think most of the time startups die is not because of the lack of a great idea. Startups die because of the money just run out. So that's my job. My mindset is basically always be raising, but at the same time I'm treading with care and only take the money in which there is strategic towards. Thank you.
Thanks, Howie. Over to you, Sean. Fundraising experience from day one until today. Maybe you can share, interesting stories that you have.
Oh yeah. Prior to the pandemic, businesses like mine wasn't really considered sexy enough because it's CPG, right? And it's not even a marketplace, it's a niche e-commerce store. And it's a lot of the VCs at the time when I was trying to raise them, mostly all of them just harps on tech or fintech or medtech, and ours was just a CPG brand, and that didn't identify themselves. So my fundraising journey was very, very difficult. Even up to today, even though we are in 9 markets and we will be entering China in by the end of the Q4, right? We've actually only managed to raise under $600,000 on venture capital. So for us, it's a difficult journey. We've never had much luck raising capital, and but at the end of the day, I guess in the respect that's a good thing for us, because then it forces us to focus on this one thing: profit, make sure it's profitable. So we've been profitable, since the start of last year, and it's actually in my mind, if I were to go into another raising round, it would, I think I would be a lot more confident and sure of myself when I raise. At the time, I think some of the mistakes for younger companies, or my younger self that I think when I raised money was when I was running out of money and I was desperate, and there was no way, and investors and potential VCs now get out very quickly. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. I've even read, most of the entrepreneurs sometimes they have to resort to their credit cards, and juggling all their savings and all that. So I believe this is, part and parcel. Yeah.
Guilty at times.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Sean. Okay, moving on to Warren. So Warren, fundraising. Maybe you can share with us, tips. What are the things that the entrepreneurs in this new generation? What are the things that they need to know, and maybe perhaps a bit of your experience in fundraising.
So for Imagine, we have been bootstrapped all the while, meaning that we've not actually taken any equity investments from VCs or PEs, right? And it's sometimes not for the lack of trying to get investors, but because it's a journey where when the going gets tough, you just have to make do with whatever you have. And at the point of desperation, the only way out is really to force yourself to go and get sales and make sure profitable, and you can find yourself that way, right? That is the biggest motivator. The fear of failure is the biggest motivator, right? To when your back is pressed against the wall, whatever you do, right? It's just you just have to get it done, right? And see it through, right? I think everybody here on this call, we have gone through the journey at one point or another. That's one part of it. Second thing is that, I think it's important to know what exactly are you raising the funding for, right? Is it to invest into a product, invest in a team, or for some, it could be partial secondary exit now, right? But I think clarity of thought on why you're raising the money and how you're going to spend the money, and more importantly, how are you going to make sure that you can multiply a few fold at least. If there's no real clarity or real roadmap or mental vision that you can multiply a few times or 10 times at least, then there's no real point in raising the money, right? There has to be an end goal or a set path in mind, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be a sense of direction, right? And then the third thing is that, when it comes to fundraising, it's all about having the ability to open the doors, taking a lot of rejections, and then eventually, hopefully, a few of them will go through, right? And then it's about making sure you can tell the compelling story on why you'll be the right person to back, why the business will be the right business to back, and why it will grow under a person's management or tutelage, right? These are just the general things that I can share and comment on. I've been very fortunate to be in a situation where I get to meet a lot of people here on the call, right, as friends over the years, and we're all part of the same sort of informal support group, right? And in general, most of the investors are all quite closely knit as well. So I think one part of it is also about you're trying to rely on social signaling, whether it's through your own efforts or getting warm introductions through friends who can vouch for you, right? That's also important.
Okay, thanks for it. Great insight. So moving on to YT, what was it like when you started fundraising? Were investors really interested because you are tapping financial products, or was it different altogether? Maybe you can share.
When we first started, that was terrible. We were the second at that point. We were not the largest player in the market, right? Our competitor at the time had raised more and much faster than us, so fundraising was miserable. So it was definitely not a fun experience. But actually, I would pick up on one of Warren's points about clarity and really having you really have to have a very high level of conviction that it's worth it, right? Like no one's asking for guarantees. If you're raising equity, any investor understands that there's risk reward, right? Like it might end up being a zero, that's fine. But do you really believe that if it works, right, whatever the probability of success or failure, but if it works, are you going to get that 10x return? Right? Like is the product, is there really the opportunity for the product to be big enough to capture enough users, clients, or revenue? So that conviction is really key, and that kind of follows on into how you raise the money, right? I every now and then, I'll meet younger founders who are looking to raise funds for the first time, and sometimes, and I remember being told this in the early days, right? It's like, when I pitch, I need to pitch as if it's not just a story. The future which I'm predicting for the business is I have to speak and believe it, that there's no other way the world is going to turn out, right? Like there has to be that level of conviction and inevitability on how the business and the world will evolve. And I guess the last thing is just keep knocking on doors, right? I think Patrick Grove always tells the story, and it's definitely the same experience I had, which is that, hey, to find one investor, you probably have to pitch 50 to 100, right? Sometimes if you're lucky and you'll grab, investors queue up, to get into a round. But at least in our experience and the experience I hear from a lot of other startups is that that's not reality. Right? Like in most cases, you have to send out and do 50 pitches to get one interested, and maybe you have to do 100 pitches to get one closed, right?
Okay, thanks, YT. So let's move on to perhaps our last round. Maybe we talk a bit about opportunities in the current ecosystem. Petrina, maybe you can shed some light on what are the things that you probably would like to see in the next few years in our startup ecosystem that would probably help to scale up, boost funding. What are the areas that you would like to see based on your past experience?
Okay, I think the current policies that government has implemented definitely are helpful for startups to strive in Malaysia. But I think there's still lack of support, or knowledge for local startups that are looking to expand and scale outside of Malaysia. A lot of the local startups we are lacking of regional mindset, or we have no ways or no idea on how to expand outside of Malaysia. Therefore, it actually is quite difficult, for Malaysia to build homegrown scale-ups. So what I feel like the government can actually provide more support to local entrepreneurs via supporting projects, endorsements, recognitions, which can actually serve as good case studies for us when we go into regional expansions. We can also encourage more collaborations and partnerships between big companies, MNCs, conglomerates, and between conglomerates and startups that can actually help support the ecosystem in terms of growth and innovations. So of course, I do hope that local tech startups can also be granted more benefits and incentives in comparison with the foreign funded tech companies, in order for us to have a stronger advantage, and for local entrepreneurs to be able to thrive in the local and the regional market.
Okay, thanks, Petrina. Very good points there. Howie, how about you? Is there anything that you see a need to have in this ecosystem where we are now?
Yes, rather than specific need, which I think Petrina has touched on very much. I think I would like to see much more of a highlight on makers, not necessarily big startups that have gone on to raise big funds or unicorns. I think in general, I believe that people need to see, hear, as well as be inspired by indie developers, for example, people who are creating products. More often than not, these are very quiet people, but they are doing very well. They might not necessarily gone on to raise big funds, but they are makers in a sense. So I'd like to see, that the startup ecosystem puts highlight on these people as a means to inspire anyone and everyone who has an idea, to give them, the tools and the skill sets to be able to create. And I think that might lead to more success stories. And with no-code solutions that are out there, in fact, if you have an idea, you could get started. And I think it's a lot about getting that first step, versus thinking that the startup journey must always start with funding. It's definitely not true. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to see. And here at Forward School, we are very much encouraging that, and we want to play an active role on that front. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Howie. How about you, Sean? Anything that you would like to see in this ecosystem for startups in Malaysia?
I really agree with what Petrina said, and especially Howie. Yeah, there needs to, the industry needs, or especially the startup environment, needs to decentralize or desensitize the idea that everything has to be about funding for people. I think it's overrated. I think that businesses or young founders need to learn how to run a company, and like how in the Inmagine group did, bootstrapping from ground up, because end of the day, startup is just something. A business needs to be profitable, such like right. And like what Jirnexu said, like what the government can do more to help the environment. Really, now I can, now that I'm paying taxes, I can sympathize. I know why Grab moved to Singapore. They are lower tax corporate taxes again, right? And even now with the digital withholding tax, right? And especially with the brain drain, that unfulfilled demand for competent knowledge workers in the future. So that's a lot more that that the industry can do or the government can do. But for ourselves, like for what Applecrumby can do, is that we try to train up the people on our own to the best of our ability, and should and when they do move on to the next level of the career, they will be, or if they go on to found their own businesses, then we hope that whatever they learned in Applecrumby would help them, be successful in their own business. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sean. And Warren, your views on our ecosystem? Anything that we probably can enhance or learn from your lessons you have seen elsewhere?
To be honest with you, right, I think every single year the government will announce a digital footprint or digital strategy, but it has not changed since 20 years ago. Because every single time we look at the same blueprints, it's always the same. The government will provide funding, the government will provide training and upskilling workshops and programs. The government will try business matching, right? Since the launch of MSC in 1998 till now, every single year is always the same, right? And then the question that we ask ourselves is, what is the success that's come out of it so far, right? Have most businesses succeeded because of the government programs or despite of what the government is trying to do, right? I think the government programs in Malaysia do help, but in general, we do need to relook at where others have done relatively better, so that the same lessons can be applied. Now, if you take an example for what the Singaporean ecosystem, how it has been nurtured by the government over the past 20 years, right? It's all done in phases, but every single phase there's a market difference. That's why you have most of the regional tech companies being based out there in Singapore. You've got maybe perhaps even 10 unicorns out of Singapore already. And it's not really about the unicorns or the valuation that's there, as a vanity metric. The more important thing is that when you have these large companies being based out of there, and they employ hundreds, if not thousands, of people. That's where you have the spillover effects that would cultivate and nurture a real ecosystem. Right? The real ecosystem at the end of the day is whether or not you have a certain pool of talent, a deep enough pool, a wide enough pool, and to build on top of it. Right? So I think that is my own view, right? In terms of where the gaps are. In Malaysia, yes, I mean we have many successes, right, here and there. But I think that the key thing is really how can we essentially pave the way forward so that the more will be growing to the sizes which are not currently here, right? So Karsam is a very good example, of what's possible to be done out of here. But basically they're the ones who buck the trend, right? In Singapore, you look at Garena or Sea as an example, right? So more than $100 billion already. Right? They're talking about companies which are worth tens of billions of dollars now, right? Being based out of Singapore. The question is, can we replicate the same? Then we need to honestly put the mirror in front of our faces and ask, what's the state of the local ecosystem right now?
Okay, good points, Warren. And YT, maybe you can also share your views on our ecosystem right now in Malaysia.
Yeah, I suppose it really depends on what you want Malaysia to be the best at, right? So I think Warren touched on the fact that, hey, Singapore has positioned itself very successfully as being the kind of a regional HQ for not just startups but even MNCs, right? So VCs are based there. A lot of international tech companies and startups will start in Singapore, even though it's a very small market, right? Like Amazon, they start in Singapore and then they'll use that as a base. Indonesia is the biggest market, it's the sexiest market, so they attract the most funds, right? They've got that going for them. It's not super clear. It's never really been that clear to me where is Malaysia positioned like that. What are we known for being the best at? That's from a kind of outside in. But actually, we have a lot of things to be pretty proud of and happy about as an ecosystem. On the funding side, I know there's been a lot of debate just in the last few minutes about how important it is or how good are we at that. There's some things the government have done pretty well, right? Like the Cradle funds have helped a lot of startups. I know a lot of founders who started off with Cradle, right? That's made a very positive impact. And then moving on from Cradle, more recently you've had the Petrina capital, right? It went to 8 co-managed funds. Now you can debate all you like about what was right or wrong, but hey, these funds are deploying capital, right? There are early stage and late stage. In fact, I know companies at every stage who are raising money now from those funds. So that's working, right? Like the government's put money into the ecosystem and it's trickling down. So there's a lot of things that are working well. But I feel one thing which people don't really talk about or we don't really market is that although Malaysia is not, we are far from the biggest, right? In fact, we're second or third smallest market in ASEAN. But it's a great breeding ground for profitable startups. A lot of regional startups, their businesses in Malaysia may not be the biggest, but they're actually really good fundamentals here, right? Like in the Internet 1.0 days, where there was like jobs or property listings, Malaysia was a fantastic market for that. If you look at like iProperty, Property Guru, I think after Singapore, Malaysia was typically one of their top markets in the region, right? We weren't the biggest in terms of population, but actually fundamentally they're very strong P&Ls running out of Malaysia. And I think that's a common theme from this group, right? Which is actually a lot of businesses can build a good fundamental P&L base in Malaysia and then look to expand regionally on top of that.
Great, thanks, YT. Something that we hope we can take cue from the points. Maybe before we end this session, maybe we'll go on a roundtable basis to share your message to upcoming entrepreneurs and like-minded entrepreneurs, perhaps joining us in this virtual session. We'll start with Petrina. Maybe you have a message to our fellow entrepreneurs out there.
Okay. So I mean, like, very humble advice from me. I would like to share with all the budding entrepreneurs or anyone out there who are looking to get into the entrepreneur journey. Startup journey is I mean, a pretty lonely journey, and most of your friends and families may not always understand the things that we as founder experience, So therefore, I believe that the very essential, element that all entrepreneurs must have is they should have passion in what they are doing. They also need persistence, perseverance on the startup they are venturing into, and always try to keep themselves, in the loop in community groups, and also, to keep themselves abreast with, things that are going on, as well as always try to seek help, in this community, so in order for the journey not to be so lonely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Petrina. Howie, Chang, any message from you?
Yep. Just simple ones. I would say that, continue to be very hungry. I think that's very important for any entrepreneur, and to persevere on, and to basically not make any excuses. I think in the end of the day, whether you make or break, regardless of whether it turns out successful or not, for myself, I think it's more of the journey that you go through. Yes, the end game, the end in mind, can be lucrative, can be what you're aiming for, can be the prize that you're reaching out towards. But I think in the end of the day, it's all about the journey of getting there. And through this journey, obviously, there will be many relationships forged. There will be many relationships being engaged and grown. And I would say that, cherish those relationships and focus on the journey. And yeah, so for me, it's really about that.
Thank you, Howie. Sean, some key message from you.
Okay, said it all. So, what else can I add? I think for any new startup or any new business, I think for one, before anything else, is cash flow, right? Your cash is the lifeblood of the company, right? And you have to ensure that you've got your 3 Ps, people, product, and process. Make sure that you've got the right people, make sure your product has the right market fit, and then make sure you've got the processes so that your people don't know everything. So at least you've got the process to fall back on, and then you tweak the processes. And perhaps there's also the 4th P, which is profit and stuff like that. But aside from that, I think the most important thing that startup founders need to remember is that just practice to get started. The more you do, the larger your luck surface is.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Great advice. Warren, any pointers for budding entrepreneurs or startups?
So Petrina raised a very good point, right? You have to rely on your support network, so that you feel less lonely and you have more people to bounce thoughts off with. How we mentioned about treating it as a journey, and then Sean also mentioned about managing cash flows and the likes, right? So the additional point that I would throw in is, yeah, I mean, you need to have a certain amount of resilience to be able to handle stress, a lot of stress, right? Running a company or being a founder, it's a lot more stressful than becoming an investment banker with JP Morgan as an example, right? Or working as a management consultant, or sitting for a very, very hard exam, because you need to manage so many expectations, so many people, so many issues. It's constant daily firefighting, right? And I think the ability to handle stress and to build an internal framework on how you handle stress, and to build a team around so that you can share the burden and also be motivated by the same vision, right? These are all the fundamental issues that any entrepreneur or anybody running a company will need to wrestle with, right? And so at the end of the day, it's not about the short-term journey. It's about whether or not you have the stamina to run the whole marathon. And I think the mental strength is sometimes not very much talked about, but this is just the reality.
Thank you, Warren, for the sound advice. YT, any message from you for future entrepreneurs?
Oof, I actually I've got this quote here I love. It was from a Clubhouse that Elon Musk did when Clubhouse was kind of taking off. I think so. According to the quote, right, someone asked Elon Musk, what words of encouragement would you give an entrepreneur? And apparently his answer was, if you need words of encouragement, don't become an entrepreneur. Which I always love, because I think both Petrina and Warren have said, right, like persistence, perseverance, grit, absolutely key, right? I mean, you just have to learn to not take no for an answer, and we always figure out a way to keep chipping away at something and figure out some way to get what you want. Just never give up.
Great. I think with that, we have reached to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Petrina, Howie, Sean, Warren, and YT, for giving us good insights, stories of your experience, and some of the key things that you would like to see in our ecosystem. And with that, we wish all our fellow viewers at the Expo 2020 Dubai safe and well-being for the session, and we hope we will have more sessions in the future, and we'll hope the rest of us today will be able to meet again sometime soon. And with that, thank you so much again to our fellow panels and organizers. Thank you so much. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zuhry, and our esteemed panel. Another insightful session, and that concludes day 3 of our Dubai Expo right here at the Malaysian Pavilion Center, ladies and gentlemen. But day 4 continues tomorrow, and we have a few keynote addresses and a moderated session as well. And that session will be our last session for today. Just to let you know some of the topics for tomorrow, we have venture debt. Well, there's one particular talking group about that, but then we've got the keynotes, the collaboration, the key to the new normal at 10:30 tomorrow morning, and 11:40 a panel discussion, transcending borders, breaking down barriers to collaboration. So collaboration is the key. And then after lunch at 2:00, we have applying a venture builder model towards a high-tech nation with Dr. Rizal Khairi. And then after that with Mr. Liu Chun Lian, a keynote as well. The topic is leveraging deep technology to accelerate growth in Asia. And the final session at 4:00, a moderated session with myself, Puan Hazami Habib, Dr. David Lacey, and Encik Jafri Ibrahim. And the topic is For Malaysia, your global innovation partner. And then we have a wrap up, and that will be the end of our Dubai Expo 2020. But join us tomorrow, everyone. You're very much part of the action. Please ask questions, leave your opinions. it will be very, very well received and respected. My name is Ben Ibrahim. It's been a pleasure to be your host for today. We'll see you tomorrow, Dubai Expo 2020.